Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari. Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari. Madhava Gopi Jana Vallabha Girivardhari. Gopi Jana Vallabha Girivardhari. Yashodanandana Bhajana Rana. Yashodanandana Bhajana Ranjana. Yamuna Tira Vanachari. Yamuna Tira Vanachari. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari. You're hired. Excellent. Jaya Vishnupad Paramahansa Buddhagacharya Ashtottara Shri Srimad Divine Grace Srila A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada Ki Jai. ISKCON BBT Founder Acharya Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai. Jai Om Vishnupad Paramahansa Buddhagacharya Ashtottara Shri Srimad Divine Grace Srila Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati Thakur Ki Jai. Ananda Koti Vaishnavinda Ki Jai. Namacharya Srila Haridas Thakur Ki Jai. Srimad Bhagavad Gita Ki Jai. Samaveda Bhaktavinda Ki Jai. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glory to Shri Guru and Gauranga. Haribol. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Wait, time out. Excuse me. Okay. All right. Okay, on this, hold on one second. Okay. On this 10th day of September 2025 in San Diego, we're reading from Srimad Bhagavad Gita as it is, translation and commentary by His Divine Grace, HG Dravida Dasa Prabhupada. And we are beginning chapter 9 today on page 373, entitled The Most Confidential Knowledge. Om Namo, did I do Om Namo? Yeah. Okay, sorry. Shri Bhagavan Vacha Idam Tute Guyatamam Prabhakshyami Anusuyave Jnanam Vijnana Sahitam Yaj Gyatva Mokshashe Ashubhat. Shri Bhagavan Vacha Idam Tute Guhyatamam Prabhakshyam Yanasuyave Jnanam Vijnana Sahitam Yajnatva Mokshase Shubhat. Shri Bhagavan Vacha Idam Tute Guhyatamam Prabhakshyam Yanasuyave Jnanam Vijnana Sahitam Yajnatva Mokshase Shubhat. Shri Bhagavan Vacha Idam Tute Guhyatamam Prabhakshyam Yanasuyave Jnanam Vijnana Sahitam Yajnatva Mokshase Shubhat. Tapas. Shri Bhagavan Vacha Idam Tute Guhyatamam Prabhakshyam Yanasuyave Jnanam Vijnana Sahitam Yajnatva Mokshase Shubhat. Bhakti Joe. Shri Bhagavan Vacha Idam Tute Guhyatamam Prabhakshyam Yanasuyave Jnanam Vijnana Sahitam Yajnatva Mokshase Shubhat. Shri Bhagavan Vacha Idam Tute Guhyatamam Prabhakshyam Yanasuyave Jnanam Vijnana Sahitam Yajnatva Mokshase Shubhat. Bhakti Chad.
Shri Bhagavan Vacha
Shri Bhagavan Vacha
Idam Tute Guhyatamam
Idam Tute Guhyatamam
Prabhakshyam Yanasuyave
Prabhakshyam Yanasuyave
Jnanam Vijnana Sahitam
Jnanam Vijnana Sahitam
Yajnatva Mokshase Shubhat.
Yajnatva Mokshase Shubhat. Anyone else want to chant?
Shri Bhagavan Vacha
Shri Bhagavan Vacha
Idam Tute Guhyam Tamam
Idam Tute Guhyatamam
Prabhakshame Anushayave
Prabhakshyam Yanasuyave
Jnanam Vijnana Sahitam
Jnanam Vijnana Sahitam
Yajnatva Mokshaya Shubhat.
Yajnatva Mokshase Shubhat. Anyone else?
Shri Bhagavan Vacha.
Ladies first.
Oh, Shri Bhagavan Vacha.
Shri Bhagavan Vacha
Idam Tute Guhyatamam
Idam Tute Guhyatamam
Pravakshyami anasuyave
pravaksham yanasuyave
jnanam vijnana sahitam
jnanam vijnana sahitam
yagyatva mokshase subhat.
yagyatva mokshase subhat. Very nice, Vanessa. The last person?
Shri Bhagavanu Vacha
Shri Bhagavanu Vacha
Idam Tute Kuhyatamam
idam tute guyatamam
Pravakshyamya Nasuyave
pravaksham yanasuyave
Jnanam Vijnana Sahitam
jnanam vijnana sahitam
Yajgyatva Mokshase Shubhat.
yagyatva mokshase subhat. Vijay Krishna, I can't resist. Can you tell me the time there now? Where you are?
The time now here is 2:27 a.m.
Well, it shows you a lot of dedication to attend the class at 2:27 a.m. Thank you for attending, Prabhu.
You're welcome.
Okay. Okay, word by word. Sri Bhagavana Vacha, the Supreme Personality of Godhead, said, Idam, this, too, but, te, unto you, guyatamam, the most confidential, pravakshyami, I am speaking, anasuyave, to the non-envious, jnanam, knowledge, vijnana, realized knowledge, sahitam, with, yat, which, gyatva, knowing, mokshase, you will be released, ashubhat, from this miserable material existence. Translation. The Supreme Personality of Godhead said, My dear Arjun, because you are never envious of me, I shall impart to you this most confidential knowledge. Here, have a seat here. Oh, I'm sorry. Yeah. Okay. Page 373. The Supreme Personality of Godhead said, My dear Arjun, because you are never envious of me, I shall impart to you this most confidential knowledge and realization, knowing which you shall be relieved of the miseries of material existence. Purport. As a devotee hears more and more about the Supreme Lord, he becomes enlightened. This hearing process is recommended in the Srimad Bhagavatam. Quote, the messages of the Supreme Personality of Godhead are full of potencies, and these potencies can be realized if topics regarding the Supreme Godhead are discussed among devotees. Close quote. This cannot be achieved by the association of mental speculators or academic scholars, for it is realized knowledge. The devotees are constantly engaged in the spiritual Lord's service. The Lord understands the mentality and sincerity of a particular living entity who is engaged in Krishna consciousness, and gives him the intelligence to understand the science of Krishna in the association of devotees. Discussion of Krishna is very potent, and if a fortunate person has such association and tries to assimilate the knowledge, then he will surely make advancement towards spiritual realization. Lord Krishna, in order to encourage Arjuna to higher and higher elevation in his potent service, describes in its 9th chapter matters more confidential than any he has already disclosed. The very beginning of the Bhagavad Gita, the 1st chapter, is more or less an introduction to the rest of the book. And the 2nd and 3rd chapters, in the 2nd and 3rd chapters, the spiritual knowledge described is called confidential. Topics discussed in the 7th and 8th chapters are specifically related to devotional service, and because they bring enlightenment in Krishna consciousness, they are called more confidential. But the matters which are described in the 9th chapter deal with unalloyed, pure devotion. Therefore, this is called the most confidential. One who is situated in the most confidential knowledge of Krishna is naturally transcendental. He therefore has no material pangs, although he is in the material world. In the Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu, it is said that although one who has a sincere desire to render loving service to the Lord is situated in the conditional state of material existence, he is to be considered liberated. Similarly, we shall find in the Bhagavad Gita, 10th chapter, that anyone who is engaged in that way is a liberated person. Now, this first verse has specific significance. The words idam jnanam, this knowledge, refer to pure devotional service, which consists of 9 different activities: hearing about Krishna, chanting about him, remembering him, serving him, worshipping him, praying to him, obeying him, maintaining friendship with him, and surrendering everything to him. By the practice of these 9 elements of devotional service, one is elevated to spiritual consciousness, Krishna consciousness. When one's heart is thus cleared of material contamination, one can understand this science of Krishna. Simply to understand that a living entity is not material is not sufficient. Well, that's what this is for. That does the trick. Okay, where was I? Does anyone recall where I was on 374 somewhere? It's in the middle of the paragraph. 1, 2, 3. Beginning now, this first verse, right? Oh, okay, I get it. Simply to understand that a living entity is not material is not sufficient. That may be the beginning of spiritual realization, but one should recognize the difference between activities of the body and the spiritual activities of one who understands that he is not the body. In the 7th chapter, we have already discussed the opulent potency of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, his different energies, the inferior and superior natures, and all this material manifestation. Now, in chapter 9, the glories of the Lord will be delineated. The Sanskrit word anasuyave in this verse is also very significant. Generally, the commentators, even if they are highly scholarly, are all envious of Krishna, the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Even the most erudite scholars write on the Bhagavad Gita very inaccurately. Because they are envious of Krishna, their commentaries are useless. The commentaries given by devotees of the Lord are bona fide. No one can explain the Bhagavad Gita or give perfect knowledge of Krishna if he is envious. One who criticizes the character of Krishna without knowing him is a fool. So such commentaries should be very carefully avoided. For one who understands that Krishna is the Supreme Personality of Godhead, the pure and transcendental personality, these chapters will be very beneficial. Om Jnana Timarandasya Jnanandana Shalakaya Chakshu Unmilitam Mena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha. I was born in the darkest of ignorance, but my spiritual master, Srila Prabhupada, opened my eyes with the torchlight of knowledge. I offer my humble obeisances unto him and all members of Sri Parampara, the disciplic succession. So what does this word confidential really mean? After all, these books are being distributed by the millions in 50, 60 languages all over the world. And there's no secret, anyone can read this chapter. But yet, still, this idea of confidential is important to understand. So, it obviously doesn't mean that it's literally a secret. But what it means is that it reveals the nature of the soul in the most complete way. We learn in the 2nd chapter, as Prabhupada points out, that we are conscious living beings. We're not the body. This is the first and essential lesson to begin, the process of devotional service. But we don't really know what that soul is, or how we can rise above the bodily and mental conceptions of life. I mean, just by reading the 1st chapter or the 2nd chapter. But still, it's confidential because 99.99999% of the living entities, including all of the subhuman beings, human beings on the earth, have no idea that they're spiritual beings. They all identify with this body. Just like if you get stopped, you go through a red light or a stop sign, say, okay, there's a cop, gets you. Okay, give me license and registration. Now what's on that license? There's a picture of you. Probably, I think it has your address. Does it have your weight? I know it has your eye color, I remember. And so it has all these identifying marks of your body. It doesn't think about the soul. And so that's how you're known. That's how, if you go to the bank and you sign, you get an account, it's your signature, right, which is unique and all these things. So this is the way everybody is thinking. We're thinking that we're part of this family, we're part of this race, we're part of this gender, we're part of this nation, all these different things. But those are very temporary. That's because you simply took birth in this particular body, which has this particular parents and this particular race and all these different things. But that's just one of many, many millions of bodies that you've had in the past. Now, Krishna consciousness is the way in which this can be your last birth in a material body. That we have, this is a really confidential knowledge which comes out in this 9th chapter, that we not only have a spiritual identity, but we have a spiritual body with the spiritual senses and spiritual activities and all these different things. And that's what is called swarup. That is our real form. Obviously, we can't be these bodies because our bodies keep changing, but we're the same person. What doesn't change? Everything changes, right? Except your soul. The soul remains as it is. We are the conscious of the body, and we're conscious of things beyond the body through these senses and all these different things. But we ourselves are changing. All of us can remember something about when we were 8 years old. I think I can, a few things. So what was different? Different body, different interests. I think it was 8 years old when I got my first bicycle. It was a major event in my life up to that time. Suddenly I had mobility, So, what is it about this chapter that is most confidential? Because we learn not only that we're spirit, but we learn the nature of that spirit, and we learn how to revive that spirit. And that the whole thing depends on this devotion. It depends on not just to understand there's a God and we're an eternal servant, but to enter into a relationship. And it can be one of 4 or 5 different relationships. The basic principle is service. Prabhupada mentions about the other commentators who are envious of Krishna. Well, the envy manifests in such a way that they don't recognize that Krishna is an actual person like they are. This Bhagavad Gita is coming. It was written by a sage. Undoubtedly, there's interesting knowledge, and we've read some similar things in the Upanishads, all that. But to actually believe with full faith that what Krishna says about himself in the Bhagavad Gita, there's no professor of religion, who's without being trained as a devotee, will actually accept that. And that's why the commentaries, I remember I read a Bhagavad Gita before I ever heard about Krishna consciousness. It was just one of the many books that my friends were reading. There was the Tibetan Book of the Dead. That was another one. Autobiography of a Yogi. I don't know if anyone's familiar with that. And there were various things like that. So Bhagavad Gita. It was a little slim volume. No Sanskrit, no word by words, no commentary, just a translation. There's only 700 sentences here. And I read through it, and I didn't have any idea what I was supposed to do. But Bhagavad Gita is actually a call to action, to transform your life. You see? At the end of the book, Krishna says, all right, here's the key. Manmana, and that verse will appear in this chapter too. Manmana bhavamad bhakto manjaji mam namaskuru mame vaishasi satyam te pradijane piyosime. There's 2 little versions of it. So what he's saying there is that just think of me, become devoted, worship me, and bow down low. You'll come to me, oh friend, I promise you this boon I shall bestow. He says that to Arjuna, but he says it to us also. You see? And there's no way that some materialistically trained professor who's teaching Eastern religions, is going to read that and think it pertains to him. I have to surrender to Krishna. No, he'll figure out some other way. Meaning they're envious. You see? So to understand Bhagavad Gita, you can't listen to them. In other words, you're not going to get the real truth that way. So anyway, Krishna says, this guhyatamam, this guhya tara, and guhyatamam. Confidential, more confidential, and most confidential. So this chapter is speaking of most confidential knowledge. And it's very key to our understanding of Krishna conscious philosophy. So let us proceed. The next verse is most famous, one of the most famous in the Bhagavad Gita. Raja Vidya Raja Guhyam Pavitram idamuttamam pratyakshavagamam dharmyam susukam kartamabhyam. This knowledge is the king of education, the most secret of all secrets. It is the purest knowledge, and because it gives direct perception of the self by realization, it is the perfection of religion. It is everlasting, and it is joyfully performed. Purport. This chapter of the Bhagavad Gita is called the King of Education because it is the essence of all doctrines and philosophies explained before. And it doesn't mean this before in the Bhagavad Gita, it means in other Vedic literature. Among the principal philosophers in India are Gautama, Kanada, Kapila, Yagyavalkya, Shandilya, and Vaishvanara. And finally there is Vyasadeva, the author of the Vedanta Sutra. So there is no dearth of knowledge in the field of philosophy or transcendental knowledge. Now the Lord says that this 9th chapter is the king of all such knowledge, the essence of all knowledge that can be derived from the study of the Vedas and different kinds of philosophy. It is the most confidential because confidential or transcendental knowledge involves understanding the difference between the soul and the body. And the king of all confidential knowledge culminates in devotional service. Generally, people are not educated in this confidential knowledge. They are educated in external knowledge. As far as ordinary education is concerned, people are involved with so many departments: politics, sociology, physics, chemistry, mathematics, astronomy, engineering, etc. There are so many departments of knowledge all over the world, and many huge universities. But there is unfortunately no university or educational institution where the science of the spirit soul is instructed. Yet the soul is the most important part of the body. Without the presence of the soul, the body has no value. Still, people are placing great stress on the bodily necessities of life, not caring for the vital soul. The Bhagavad Gita, especially from the 2nd chapter on, stresses the importance of the soul. In the very beginning, the Lord says that this body is perishable and that the soul is not perishable. Andabandahime deha nityasyokta sharirinaha. That is a confidential part of knowledge, simply knowing that the spirit soul is different from this body and that its nature is immutable, indestructible, and eternal. But that gives no positive information about the soul. Sometimes people are under the impression that the soul is different from the body and that when the body is finished or one is liberated from the body, the soul remains in a void and becomes impersonal. But actually, that is not the fact. How can the soul, which is so active within this body, be inactive after being liberated from the body? It is always active. If it is eternal, then it is eternally active. And its activities in the spiritual kingdom are the most confidential part of spiritual knowledge. These activities of the spirit soul are therefore indicated here as constituting the king of all knowledge, the most confidential part of all knowledge. This knowledge is the purest form of all activities, as explained in Vedic literature. In the Padma Purana, man's sinful activities have been analyzed and are shown to be the results of sin after sin. Those who are engaged in fruitive activities are entangled in different stages and forms of sinful reactions. For instance, when the seed of a particular tree is sown, the tree does not appear immediately to grow. It takes some time. It is first a small sprouting plant, then it assumes the form of a tree, then it flowers and bears fruit, and when it is complete, the flowers and fruits are enjoyed by persons who have sown the seed of the tree. Similarly, a man performs a sinful act, and like a seed, it takes time to fructify. There are different stages. The sinful action may have already stopped within the individual, but the results, or the fruit, so-called fruit of that sinful action, are still to be experienced. There are sins which are still in the form of a seed, and there are others which are already fructified and are giving its fruit, and which we are experiencing as distress and pain. As explained in the 28th verse of the 7th chapter, a person who has completely ended the reactions of all sinful activities, and who is fully engaged in pious activities, being freed from the duality of this material world, becomes engaged in devotional service to the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Krishna. In other words, those who are actually engaged in the devotional service of the Supreme Lord are already freed from all reactions. This statement is confirmed in the Padma Purana. Aprarabdha palam papam kutam bijam palonmukam krame naiva paliyeta Vishnu bhakti vitatmanam. For those who are engaged in the devotional service of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, all sin-free actions, whether fructified in the stock or in the form of a seed, gradually vanish. Therefore, the purifying potency of devotional service is very strong, and it is called pavitram uttamam, the purest. Uttama means transcendental. Tamas means this material world or darkness. And uttama means that which is transcendental to material activities. Devotional activities are never to be considered material, although sometimes it appears that devotees are engaged just like ordinary men. One who can see and is familiar with devotional service will know that they are not material activities. They are all spiritual and devotional, uncontaminated by the material modes of nature. We'll learn about those later. It is said that the execution of devotional service is so perfect that one can perceive the results directly. This direct result is actually perceived, and we have practical experience that any person who is chanting the holy names of Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, in course of chanting without offense, feels some transcendental pleasure, and very quickly becomes purified of all material contamination. That is actually seen. Furthermore, if one engages not only in hearing, but in trying to broadcast the message of devotional activities as well, or if he engages himself in helping the missionary activities of Krishna consciousness, he gradually feels spiritual progress. This advancement in spiritual life does not depend on any kind of previous education or qualification. The method itself is so pure that by simply engaging in it, one becomes pure. In the Vedanta Sutra 3.2.26, this is described in the following words. Prakashas cha karman abhyasat. Devotional service is so potent that simply by engaging in the activities of devotional service, one becomes enlightened without a doubt. A practical example of this can be seen in the previous life of Narada, who in that life happened to be the son of a maidservant. He had no education, nor was he born into a high family. But when his mother was engaged in serving great devotees, Narada also became engaged, and sometimes, in the absence of his mother, he would serve the great devotees himself. Narada personally says, Uchishta lepan unamodito dvijai, sakrit smabunje tadapasta kilbishaha. Evam pravittasya vishuddha chetasas, tad dharma evat noruchi pajayate. Hare Krishna. I just want to let you know that this purport to this verse was originally written as a whole article by Prabhupada. That's why it's quite a long purport, and it has a beginning, middle, and an end, and it's very important, actually. So what does that mean? In this verse from Srimad Bhagavatam 1.5.25, Narada describes his previous life to his disciple Vyasadeva. He says that while engaged as a boy servant for these purified devotees during the 4 months of their stay, he was intimately associating with them. Sometimes those sages left remnants of food on their dishes, and the boy who would wash their dishes wanted to taste the remnants. So he asked the great devotees for their permission, and when they gave it, Narada ate those remnants and consequently became freed from all sinful reactions. As he went on eating, he gradually became as pure-hearted as the sages. The great devotees relished the taste of unceasing devotional service to the Lord by hearing and chanting, and Narada gradually developed the same taste. Narada says further, Tatran vaham Krishna kata pragayatam anugrahena shinavam manorharaha ta shraddhayame nupadam visrinvatah. By associating with the sages, Narada got the taste for hearing and chanting the glories of the Lord, and he developed a great desire for devotional service. Therefore, as described in the Vedanta Sutra, Prakashas chakarman yabhyasat, if one is engaged simply in the acts of devotional service, everything is revealed to him automatically, and he can understand. This is called pratyaksha, directly perceived. The word dharmyam in this verse, is it here? No, that's in the original verse. The word dharma means the path of religion. Narada was actually a son of a maidservant. He had no opportunity to go to school. He was simply assisting his mother. And fortunately, his mother rendered some service to the devotees. The child Narada also got the opportunity and simply by association achieved the highest goal of all religion. The highest goal of all religion is devotional service, as stated in Srimad Bhagavatam, Savai Pungsang Paro Dharmo Yato Bhaktir Adhokshache. Religious people generally do not know that the highest perfection of religion is the attainment of devotional service. As we have already discussed in regard to the last verse of chapter 8, Vedeshu Yaggeshu Tapaksu Chaiva, generally Vedic knowledge is required for self-realization. But here, although Narada never went to school, or the school of the spiritual master, and was not educated in Vedic principles, he acquired the highest results of Vedic study. This process is so potent that even without performing the religious process regularly, one can be raised to the highest perfection. How is this possible? This is also confirmed in the Vedic literature. Acharyavan Purusho Veda. One who is in association with great acharyas and great devotees, even if he is not educated or has never studied the Vedas, can become familiar with all the knowledge necessary for realization. The process of devotional service is a very happy one. Susukam. Sukha means happy and su means very. Why devotional service consists? Why? Devotional service consists of Shravanam Kirtanam Vishnu. So one can simply hear the chanting of the glories of the Lord, or can attend philosophical lectures on transcendental knowledge given by authorized acharyas. Simply by sitting, one can learn. Then one can eat the remnants of the food offered to God, nice palatable dishes. In every state, devotional service is joyful. In every stage. Should be stage. In every stage, devotional service is joyful. One can execute devotional service even in the most poverty-stricken condition. The Lord says in this chapter, Patram Pushpam Palam Toyam. He is ready to accept from the devotees any kind of offering, never mind what, even a leaf, a flower, a bit of fruit, or a little water, which are all available in every part of the world, can be offered by any person, regardless of social position, and will be accepted if offered with love. There are many instances in history. Simply by tasting the tulsi leaves offered to the lotus feet of the Lord, great sages like Sanat Kumara became great devotees. Therefore, the devotional process is very nice, and it can be executed in a happy mood. God accepts only the love with which things are offered to Him. It is said that this devotional service is eternally existing. Abhyayam, that's in the verse we read. It is not as the Mayavadi philosophers claim. Although they sometimes take to so-called devotional service, their idea is that as long as they are not liberated, they will continue their devotional service. But at the end, when they become liberated, they will become one with God. Quote, such temporary time-serving devotional service is not accepted as pure devotional service. Actual devotional service continues even after liberation. When the devotee goes to the spiritual planet in the kingdom of God, he is also engaged there in serving the Supreme Lord. He does not try to become one with the Supreme Lord. As will be seen in the Bhagavad Gita, actual devotional service begins after liberation. After one is liberated, when one is situated in the Brahman position, Brahma Bhuta, one's devotional service begins. Samak sarveshu bhuteshu mad bhaktim labate param. By executing devotional service, one can understand the Supreme Lord. No one can understand the Supreme Personality of Godhead by executing Karma Yoga, Jnana Yoga, Ashtanga Yoga, or any other yoga independently. By these yogic methods, one may make a little progress toward Bhakti Yoga, but without coming to the stage of devotional service, one cannot understand what is the Personality of Godhead. In the Srimad Bhagavatam, it is confirmed that when one becomes purified by executing the process of devotional service, especially by hearing Srimad Bhagavatam or the Bhagavad Gita from realized souls, then he can understand the science of Krishna or the science of God. Evam prasanna manaso bhagavan bhakti yogataha. When one's heart is cleared of all nonsense, then one can understand what God is. Thus, the process of devotional service of Krishna consciousness is the king of all education and the king of all confidential knowledge. It is the purest form of religion, and it can be executed joyfully without difficulty. Therefore, one should adopt it. QED. So this is quite a lengthy purport, and seeing as how it was written as an essay, beginning, middle, and end, I thought we'd read the whole thing. Maybe we'll begin Monday's class with this verse. It's so important. So Raja Vidya Raja Guyam. So the king of knowledge and is also the king of confidential understanding. Hare Krishna. You're there? Okay, there. She's fallen asleep, I think. Haribol. Give her a little push. You okay?
Yeah, I'm just trying to listen. I'm trying to close my eyes.
Okay, all right. I'm sorry. I thought you had fallen asleep.
No.
Okay, we're all right.
I do that so I listen in the auditorium.
Okay, no problem. So let's go through this, and we'll have to, I think, take it up next time too. So the king of it, because of the essence of all doctrine and philosophy is explained before. So we should understand that the Bhagavad Gita is a distillation of the distillation of the essence of Vedic knowledge. And devotional service, or bhakti yoga, is the final goal of our existence. This is, sometimes people ask, I remember as a kid, well, what is the meaning of all this? You know, and no one really could give me a good answer. The meaning seems to be to try to enjoy as much as possible, and you know, so all of that is part of Maya's power. We've left the spiritual world, and that means we are in the thrall of the illusory energy of the Lord. Now, within our numerous births and our numerous exposures, as I bring up practically every class, human life itself is a rare opportunity, and you can see how rare it is. Just in this few blocks here, you can probably find hundreds of species of life, so many plants, so many insects. I remember recently we had a hummingbird who was hovering around one of our big trash bins there. I said, well, I wonder what he's doing there, you know. And the other Joseph, who lives next door, he was saying, oh, there's bugs in there, you know, and they're just waiting for him so that they can eat him. You ever see a hummingbird? It's incredible how they can just stay in one spot. You know, they're beating those things so fast. I mean, some living entity wanted to have that power, you know, and was given that rather than be a regular bird, you know. So there's all kinds of species. The Vedas say there's 8,400,000 species. 400,000 of them are human beings. Now, we're not species, you know, there's one human species, but there's 400,000 different distinct varieties. And unfortunately, the vast mass, especially in this age of Kali, of human beings, what to speak of the other animals and plants and things which have no opportunity to understand this, we're fully absorbed in material life, in the bodily concept of life. Where can I find pleasure? Where can I find safety? You know, where's something to eat? You know, when I get tired after all of this, I take some rest, eating, sleeping, mating, defending. But we share these things with the animals. I always like this verse from the Hitopadesh. The very title of the book is encouraging. Upadesh, instructions for benefit of human beings. Hitopadesh. So this very illuminating verse, Prabhupada would quote this a lot. He says, Ahara nidra bhayamaitanansha samanyanetat pashabhi naranam. Dharmo hitesham hadiko vishesho dharmena hina pashabhi samana. That we share, with the animals, we share these four principles: eating, sleeping, mating, and defending. We do it, they do it. So what's the difference? Dharmo hitesham adhiko vishe. Adhika, the exclusive and valuable quality of human beings is that there is, or should be, or must be, dharma present. Now, what is that dharma? What is it? Dharma can, you know, is definitely an English word by now. Probably just says religion in the dictionary or something. But it's not religion in the way, it probably said that kind of faith. No, it's not just a kind of faith. Dharma is the essential nature of something. As I always point out, those of you who come to these classes. For instance, that chair has a dharma. Our Dhanabhari Mataji is sitting there comfortably, confident that the chair will do its dharma and not collapse under her. and these new ones do that. Same thing with the bench, you know, it has a little different qualities. It's soft, it's a little more comfortable, you know. Anyway, so, but if you have a chair, you sit on it and it collapses, then it hasn't done its dharma, right? And it can cause havoc. Similarly, everything has a dharma. And we ourselves have a sanatan dharma, an eternal dharma that we've forgotten. And so what this verse says is that if we simply get absorbed in these four animal propensities, we may have a very fancy way of eating, you know, and defending. Oh, we have this new, you know, so many weapons and the drones and everything. But it's all the same thing, and it's a tragic waste of the human life. This is what the Vedas say. Having come to this human form of life, and here's another verse I always chant, you've probably heard a million times. Labdva sudurlabamidam bahusam bhavante manusham artadam anityamapi adhira turnam yateta napateta namityava nikshayasaya vishaya kalusarvatakshat. Having attained this human form of life, labdva means to attain, which is sudurlabam, it's rare, you know. We've been through all the sciences that when you lose the human form of life due to misusing the human form of life and being sinful, you can be cast down into some lower species, you know, say a dog, okay? So, okay, if you're lucky you get a good master and they'll take care of you, take you on a walk rather than just become a street dog. And you live your life as a dog, and you're not going to, you know, even if your master happens to be reading Bhagavad Gita, he can't help you to understand it, you know, he or she. So you go through the life as a dog, then you know, like the body is just a big machine, and we know everything, eventually cars are going to break down, you got to get a new one, right, everything. So eventually breaks down, and that's called death, and then you go on to your next body, you see. Now if you're a lower animal, then you're gonna come up automatically. I don't know what is above the dog, but it come up. And eventually, again, you become a human being. So that's what this verse is about. It's a very rare gift. We should understand that. Labdva sudurlabamidam bahusam bhavante. You've achieved it after many, many births, the human form of life. Manusham, the same word in English and manusham, human. Artadam. And it gives the final goal, a valuable thing of life, which is the ability to understand this knowledge and to absorb it and act on it. So, artadam, but like all others, it is anityam. It's not eternal. The time is ticking on every one of us. Anityam, so one has to be dhira. Now this comes up at the beginning of the Bhagavad Gita, this word, you know, dehinosmin yata dehe, that we're going through this body, transmigrating, eventually leave the body, and we have to be sober-minded about the whole thing and understand to try to get our best next body. So one has to be sober-minded and consider what's really important, dhira. And having considered, then turnam yateta. Immediately start striving for the ultimate goal of life. Don't wait, because Maya is so strong, you could easily be covered over. Turnam yateta napateta namityavat. As long as you haven't died yet, you know, start striving, keep striving. That's what it says. Napateta anumritya yavat. So, anumritya, death is always over our shoulder. We don't realize it. Always following. You know, at any time, things can happen. The fifth, I-5 or anywhere. So what should you strive for? Now the last line, this is the high point of it. Nikshayasaya. What is it? There's shreyas and prayas. It's worth going over this. Some of you haven't heard this before. Prayas is immediate goal in life, something that you strive for, that will give you happiness, you know, like that, material. Or immediate, like kids, you know, they want some immediate gratification, you know, right? Some cookie, something, some TV show, you know. So, and then there's shreyas, which is ultimate good. To be situated in your ultimate good means for ultimate happiness, unending, ever increasing. You can't get that. It's not sense gratification. So that's what you should strive for, because it exists, and the Vedas they describe it and encourage us. So we have to accept that knowledge. Nikshayasaya, not just shreyas, but nikshayas, the ultimate good. Vishaya karosarva taksyat. Because after all, in all those other bodies, you've experienced all varieties of sense gratification, Vishaya. And what has it gotten you? Another material body to face birth, old age, disease, and death. So there's no percentage in sense gratification. As I like to say in every class I give. Yehi sangsparjaja boga dukkha yonaya evate ajandamanta konteya nateshu ramate buddha. Said, those who are intelligent, O Arjun, the Buddha, they do not involve themselves in the pleasures that come from the contact of the senses with their sense objects. In other words, sense gratification. You see, why? Because it's very temporary, and it's the source of all misery. You mean all the things that I enjoy? How is that the source of misery? Because the main thing is that it plants a desire seed in your mind to do it again. And if you're able to do it again in this lifetime, you will. And if you can get into habits of, I like to do this, watch this movie, eat this food, whatever it may be. You see. But those are all, affecting your consciousness. And whatever state of mind you have, the most prominent thought, that's going to determine your next birth. That's why Krishna consciousness is so important, to come to the point of thinking of Krishna at every moment, because he's everywhere. The great devotees, they see him everywhere. My morning walk, okay, this is, I mention in every class. So I'm seeing there's a lot of pavement, there's these trees, buildings, cars, the old thing you go outside. So how do you see Krishna there? Okay, there's a car. Well, how did that car come to be? Well, it's made of metal, it has things, it's some fuel in there. Where did all that come from? It came from God. He created the sun that made the trees grow, that died and were buried and turned into oil and made them refined into gasoline, and now is moving that car. You see? So the source is Krishna. And not only that, but there are living beings. I see so much foliage. Each one of them has a soul. The soul is part and parcel of Krishna, just like we are. And there's a super soul in there also. Wherever the soul is a super soul. So if you read the Shastra and you believe it, then you can see Krishna's influence and his presence everywhere. He says he's present in every atom. How can you get away from him? If you see that. So that remembering Krishna and remembering our relationship with him. Okay, I'm not only taking the walk, I'm also chanting the holy name. That's why that's the exercise I choose, because I can simultaneously take the walk. If I would make a detour and go into the yard gym, then there wouldn't be any chance of being Krishna conscious. Have you been up that way? First of all, they play loud music, that with the thing, and there's somebody yelling at you and saying, do it this way and that way. It's completely on the bodily concept of life. So I quickly go past Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, and I'm chanting and walking and seeing and like that. So that remembrance of Krishna is the whole point, to increase it, and because that assures us, even in this life, that when we leave this body, we'll go back home, back to Godhead. And we won't come back here again. That's said 3 or 4 or 5 times in the Bhagavad Gita. Now the obvious question, well, why do we come here in the first place? I mean, how do we know we won't fall into Maya again? Well, we're not going to dwell on it, but there'll be some remembrance. I'm not going to do that again. That was pretty stupid, all that suffering and like that. So, but the point was that even before we leave this body, we can be situated in our Swarup, in our eternal relation with Krishna, and enjoying it every moment. Because the other verse, this verse, the wise don't take part in this sense gratification because it's the source of all suffering. Well, how do they enjoy? Previous verse. Vayasparshesu asaktatma vindadyatmanaya sukham sabbrahma yoga yuktatma sukham akshayam ashnute. The wise, they give up this sense gratification and they learn how to enjoy by being connected to the Supreme Brahman, Krishna, in service. Varieties of loving service, beginning with Hare Krishna, chanting. You see? And they enjoy so much that they never want to give it up. And so even in the middle of the night, they're dreaming of Krishna. 24 hours, you see, enjoying that relationship with God. And when the body finally falls, then you go back home and you resume your long-lost service to Krishna. And they welcome you back. Welcome back, That's the goal. Now, it sounds fantastical, but we have a whole line of great intellects and philosophers and devotees who are saying, no, this is true. We were experiencing it ourselves. Prabhupada came to America. There was no question of coming in order to enjoy something, you know, vacation, or maybe make $1 million, you know, because I'll be a yogi, I'll be a great yogi, you know. No, he sacrificed so much. He almost lost his life on it. He had 2 heart attacks. Comes, he's not trying to cash in, he's trying to give Krishna consciousness. So he remained poor the first year, basically, it was, you know. But then Krishna, you know, gave him he was able to plant the seed and the seed of faith in some devotees in the lower Manhattan, who then helped him, and the whole thing grew. You know this wonderful story. So it was all, you know, and he was seeing Krishna's acting here, you know, and he followed his guru's order, you know, and preached him in America. Come, you know, 69 years old. He wasn't in the best of health. But Krishna preserved it. 12 years of preaching, he was able to spread Krishna consciousness all over the world, start so many temples. I was there in the opening of the Krishna Balaram temple, 1975, in Vrindavan. And it was just such a victory. Prabhupada, he did the first arti. I don't know if you've ever seen that movie. He's actually in the middle. And he's doing the arti, and it's so blissful. You can see that. And there's all the devotees are chanting, and you're like crazy, you know. Amazing. So, but he never, you know, he never cashed out, you know, he never tried to enjoy. He always did looking and traveling. He was saying, no, oh, this is great, Detroit here or in LA, I'll just sit here and write. But he couldn't do it, because the writers would write him, oh, Prabhupada, please come here to Venezuela, you know, and said, okay, so he took off, you know, Venezuela, Australia, Japan, back to India, America, everywhere. For a man that age, in his 70s, late 70s, to be traveling like that, it's austerity in itself. So he proved that the pleasure, you know, that's coming, that Krishna is giving him from giving Krishna consciousness, seeing it take hold in devotees and the whole thing developing, was so high and wonderful that he wasn't even tempted to just give up the traveling. He performed this austerity, you know. So that's proof that it's a transcendental type of pleasure. It's not dependent on the condition of the body. Even if you have some disease, you know, yes, that's going to, you know, be the problem. But still, you can be absorbed in Krishna consciousness and transcend it, and remain happy, you know. Even just like, you know, I don't want to give myself an example, but I mean, if I hadn't been in Krishna consciousness at all, as I approach my 78th birthday, I don't think I would be very happy. Uh-oh. Is it time to stop? Oh, you're right. I went completely over time. All right, one little poem. Since pleasure is a dream, Krishna supreme. The aim is prem, and the way is the name. All glory to Srila Prabhupada. Hari Hari Bol.